October 14, 1944, 1 p.m. 28,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. Hauptmann Klaus Primus Steiner pulled his Messerschmitt Bf 109 G14 into a climbing turn, his 200th confirmed kill, a B-17 flying fortress, spiraling earthward in flames behind him. At 26, Steiner was among the Luftwaffe's most decorated pilots, holder of the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords, veteran of 4 years of aerial combat from the Battle of Britain to the desperate defense of the Reich. But as he watched the American bomber's crew bail out, 10 parachutes blossoming against the autumn sky, a crushing realization began to form in Steiner's mind. This was his second mission today, his third this week against American daylight raids. And tomorrow, there would be another 1,000 bombers, just as there had been yesterday and the day before that. Steiner's radio crackled. Primus, this is Control. Vector 090, altitude 25,000. Large formation approaching from the west. Another raid. Always another raid. As Steiner turned toward the new threat, he could already see them, a river of silver aircraft stretching to the horizon, their contrails painting white lines across the German sky. What Steiner didn't know, what no German pilot could have comprehended, was that he was witnessing the product of an industrial machine so vast that his 200 victories, remarkable as they were, represented less than a day's production from American factories. 3 months earlier, in July 1944, Boeing's Plant 2 in Seattle had achieved a production milestone that would have seemed impossible to German engineers. One B-17 flying fortress every 90 minutes. The consolidated plant in San Diego was producing B-24 Liberators even faster. North American Aviation's Inglewood facility was turning out P-51 Mustangs at a rate of 1 aircraft every 32 minutes. Across the United States, aircraft production had reached a crescendo that defied German comprehension. In 1944 alone, American factories would produce 96,318 aircraft, more than Germany had built during the entire war to that point. But on October 14th, as Steiner climbed toward another formation of B-24s, these statistics were merely abstract numbers to the German High Command. The reality was about to become devastatingly personal. Steiner's Jagdgeschwader 11, stationed at Darmstadt, had begun the year with 48 operational aircraft and 52 pilots. By October, they were down to 23 aircraft and 19 pilots, not from a single catastrophic battle, but from the grinding attrition of daily combat against an enemy that seemed to multiply like cells dividing. Oberleutnant Hans S.C. Hahn, Steiner's wingman and closest friend, had been shot down on October 8th, his third bailout in 6 weeks. Each time, the Luftwaffe had lost an experienced pilot for days or weeks while he recovered or found his way back to base. Meanwhile, the Americans simply appeared the next day with fresh crews, as if drawing from an inexhaustible reservoir. The mathematics of destruction were becoming impossible to ignore. Steiner's combat diary, meticulously maintained since 1940, told a story that contradicted every assumption about wearing down enemy air power through attrition. 1940, 23 confirmed kills against RAF fighters and bombers. British raids decreased noticeably by autumn. 1941, 31 kills on the Eastern Front. Soviet air activity diminished significantly in his sector. 1942, 29 kills over North Africa and the Mediterranean. Allied air presence remained sporadic. 1943, 47 kills defending against Allied raids over Germany. Enemy formations grew larger, not smaller. 1944, through October, 70 kills against American daylight bombers and fighters. Enemy raids intensified daily. For the first time in his career, increasing his personal score seemed to have no impact on enemy capabilities. If anything, American formations were growing larger and more frequent. What Steiner couldn't know was that his experience reflected a fundamental shift in the nature of aerial warfare. Previous campaigns had involved relatively small air forces where individual pilot skill and aircraft performance could significantly impact overall strength. But by 1944, America had transformed aircraft production into an industrial process operating on a scale that made individual combat results statistically irrelevant. The Willow Run plant in Michigan, built by Ford Motor Company for consolidated aircraft, had solved mass production of the complex B-24 Liberator using automotive assembly line techniques. At peak production, Willow Run completed one B-24 every 63 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The plant employed 42,000 workers operating on 3 shifts, producing bombers faster than Germany could train pilots. Meanwhile, German aircraft production was collapsing under Allied bombing and resource shortages. Messerschmitt's Regensburg plant, which had produced 230 Bf-109s monthly in early 1944, managed only 74 aircraft in October, many with substandard materials and inexperienced workers. Quality control had degraded to the point where new aircraft required extensive repairs before reaching operational units. On October 15th, the day after his 200th victory, Steiner attended a briefing that would crystallize his growing doubts. Oberst Gunther Lutzow, commanding JG-11, spread intelligence photographs across the briefing room table. The images, taken by high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft over England, showed American bomber bases in East Anglia. "Gentlemen," Lutzow began, his voice tight with barely controlled frustration, "intelligence estimates the Americans have 3,500 heavy bombers operational in England alone. Yesterday, we destroyed 43 aircraft, a significant tactical success. Intelligence also reports that 73 new bombers arrived at English bases yesterday to replace losses and expand forces." Steiner studied the photographs. Endless rows of B-17s and B-24s covered former RAF bases, their silver wings gleaming in neat geometric patterns. The images reminded him of seeing massive automobile factories during a pre-war visit to Detroit, not individual aircraft, but products of industrial processes. Lutzow continued, "Our best estimates suggest we must maintain a kill ratio of 3 to 1 against American bombers simply to prevent their forces from growing. Current ratios favor us at 2 to 1, but this is insufficient. We are losing the war of mathematics." The briefing included sobering statistics compiled by Luftwaffe intelligence. American pilot training programs were graduating 2,000 aircrew monthly, more than the Luftwaffe had trained in the previous year. American flight schools operated 1,500 training aircraft simultaneously, burning more aviation fuel for instruction than Germany allocated for combat operations. Most devastating was intelligence regarding American pilot replacement rates. Shot-down airmen were replaced within days by crews with 250-plus hours of training, compared to German replacement pilots receiving as little as 30 hours due to fuel shortages. American crews shot down over Germany were immediately replaced by trained reserves, while German pilots like Hahn might be out of action for weeks. That evening, Steiner walked through the dispersal areas where JG-11's remaining aircraft sat camouflaged under trees and netting. His personal Bf-109, Schwarz 7, bore 200 small victory markers painted beneath the cockpit, an impressive tally that represented 4 years of combat survival and exceptional skill. But for the first time, those victory markers felt meaningless. Unteroffizier Wilhelm Willy Krieger, his chief mechanic, was working on the engine. "Herr Hauptmann," Krieger reported, "we have 17 aircraft nominally operational, but only 12 with reliable engines. Replacement parts are difficult." Steiner nodded absently. Spare parts were rationed severely, engines were rebuilt multiple times instead of being replaced. Many aircraft operated with mismatched components cannibalized from wrecks. Meanwhile, American bomber formations displayed perfect maintenance, hundreds of aircraft in tight formation, every engine running smoothly, no stragglers falling out due to mechanical problems. The contrast was most visible in aircraft serviceability rates. American bomber squadrons typically maintained 85 to 90% operational status through abundant spare parts and replacement aircraft. German fighter units were fortunate to achieve 60% serviceability, with aircraft frequently grounded for weeks awaiting basic components. October 18th brought a mission that would prove decisive for Steiner's understanding. Intelligence reported a massive American formation, over 1,200 bombers with 800 fighter escorts, approaching targets in Bavaria. Every available Luftwaffe fighter was scrambled for what commanders hoped would be a decisive blow against American air power. Steiner led his staffel into combat at 1,420 hours, climbing through broken clouds toward a formation of B-17s that seemed to fill the sky from horizon to horizon. This was the largest American raid he had ever encountered, a demonstration of air power that dwarfed anything he had witnessed during 4 years of war. The engagement was chaotic and devastating. Steiner shot down 2 B-17s in the initial attack, bringing his total to 202 victories. But as his staffel reformed for a second pass, American P-51 Mustangs appeared from above, their long-range capability allowing them to escort bombers deep into Germany for the first time. The air battle raged for 20 minutes across 50 miles of sky. When it ended, Steiner found himself alone, his radio dead, flying a damaged aircraft with less than 10 minutes of fuel remaining. Around him, the American formation continued eastward, barely disrupted by the German attacks. Landing at Darmstadt, Steiner discovered the cost of the engagement. JG-11 had shot down 14 American aircraft, bombers and fighters combined. In return, they had lost 11 fighters with 7 pilots killed or missing. The exchange rate slightly favored the Germans, but Steiner realized this tactical success was strategically meaningless. Within hours, American reconnaissance flights were photographing the damage to German airfields and crashed aircraft. By evening, BBC radio was broadcasting casualty figures. 8th Air Force reports the loss of 14 aircraft in today's operations against synthetic fuel targets. All primary objectives were successfully attacked. 14 aircraft lost. To the Americans, this represented routine operational losses, acceptable attrition in pursuit of strategic objectives. To the Luftwaffe, replacing 11 fighters and 7 experienced pilots would require weeks of effort that Germany could no longer afford. That night, Steiner sat in his quarters writing a letter to his father, a World War I pilot who had scored 23 victories against Allied aircraft. How could he explain that his 202 victories meant nothing? That the enemy replaced losses faster than Germany could inflict them? The Americans fight with mathematics, Steiner wrote. They calculate that trading aircraft achieves strategic objectives regardless of tactical outcomes. They can afford losses that would cripple our entire force structure. What Steiner was describing, without understanding its full implications, was the American approach to industrial warfare. By 1944, American military planning treated aircraft as expendable resources rather than irreplaceable assets. Mission planners calculated acceptable loss rates, typically 3 to 5% per mission, that would have been catastrophic for the resource-constrained Luftwaffe. American strategic bombing doctrine explicitly accepted heavy losses in pursuit of long-term objectives. The October 14, 1943, raid on Schweinfurt, exactly 1 year before Steiner's 200th victory, had cost the 8th Air Force 60 bombers with 600 aircrew casualties. This single day's losses exceeded total Luftwaffe pilot strength in many sectors. Yet within weeks, American bomber strength had not only recovered but increased. The American replacement system operated on industrial principles. Boeing had 31 major production facilities producing B-17s and B-29s. Consolidated operated 5 plants building B-24s. Douglas, Lockheed, North American, and Republic added hundreds of additional production lines. Combined monthly production peaked at over 9,000 aircraft in early 1944. German aircraft production, by contrast, remained essentially artisanal despite attempts at mass production. Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Heinkel, and Junkers operated a total of 47 major facilities, but these were frequently disrupted by Allied bombing. Monthly production never exceeded 4,000 aircraft and was declining rapidly by late 1944. More significantly, American training programs had created a vast reservoir of replacement aircrew. By October 1944, approximately 400,000 American aircrew had completed training programs, with thousands more in various stages of instruction. Many trained airmen never saw combat simply because aircraft production exceeded immediate personnel requirements. Germany, meanwhile, had shortened pilot training from 250 hours to 30 hours due to fuel shortages. New pilots reached combat units with minimal experience, often flying their first operational mission within days of completing basic flight training. The result was catastrophic loss rates among replacement pilots, creating a downward spiral where training became even more abbreviated. On October 22nd, Steiner experienced a moment that crystallized these abstract statistics into personal reality. During a scramble against another massive American formation, he encountered a B-17 crew bailing out of their damaged aircraft. As his parachute descended, the American pilot, a young man who couldn't have been older than 20, landed near the German airfield. During the capture process, Steiner spoke briefly with the American, Lieutenant James Jimmy Morrison from Iowa. Morrison mentioned, almost casually, that this was his 8th mission over Germany. His crew had completed 3 months of combat training in the United States before deployment, followed by additional training in England. They had flown the newest Model B-17G with the latest defensive systems. "How many missions do you fly?" Morrison asked through the interpreter. Steiner, curious, answered honestly, "I have flown over 400 combat sorties since 1940. Morrison's reaction was telling. 400? My crew rotates home after 25 missions. Most guys never fly more than 50 combat sorties total. This exchange revealed the fundamental difference between American and German approaches to aircrew utilization. American doctrine treated individual pilots and crews as replaceable components in a larger system, rotating experienced personnel home to train new crews while maintaining high overall capability through systematic replacement. German practice, by necessity, kept experienced pilots in combat until they were killed or too badly wounded to continue flying. Steiner's 400-plus combat sorties represented irreplaceable experience that would be lost forever when he was eventually shot down, an event that statistical analysis suggested was inevitable. The American system, while seemingly wasteful of individual experience, created sustainable combat effectiveness. Returning veterans trained new crews, spreading tactical knowledge throughout the force. German aces like Steiner accumulated impressive individual scores but died with their knowledge, leaving inexperienced replacements to repeat the same learning process. Over the following days, interrogation of captured American aircrew provided Steiner's unit with disturbing intelligence about the scope of American air power. Crews casually mentioned bases in England housing 2,000-plus aircraft. They described training facilities in the United States with more aircraft than the entire Luftwaffe possessed. They spoke of production lines where workers built components for dozens of aircraft simultaneously. Lieutenant Colonel Heinrich Pritzel Bahr, one of Germany's leading aces with 220 victories, visited Darmstadt on October 28 to share intelligence gathered from multiple sources. His briefing to JG-11's pilots was sobering. "Gentlemen, we have compiled production figures from various intelligence sources. The numbers are difficult to accept." Bahr consulted his notes. American aircraft production for 1944 will exceed 96,000 aircraft. German production will reach approximately 40,000 aircraft, but this includes training aircraft, transports, and other non-combat types. Operational fighter production is perhaps 20,000 aircraft. The implications were staggering. America was producing nearly 5 aircraft for every German aircraft, and this disparity was increasing. More troubling, American production focused heavily on multi-engine bombers, each B-17 or B-24 representing the industrial capacity to build 3 to 4 single-engine fighters. Bahr continued, "Intelligence estimates suggest Americans have approximately 15,000 combat aircraft operational in all theaters. We estimate current Luftwaffe strength at perhaps 3,800 operational aircraft, including training and transport units." These figures revealed why individual German pilot success seemed meaningless against American formations. Even if German aces achieved impossible kill ratios, they were fighting an enemy with overwhelming numerical superiority that increased daily. The meeting concluded with an analysis that haunted Steiner for years afterward. "If current trends continue," Bahr stated, "American production will exceed 200,000 aircraft by war's end. To achieve numerical parity through combat attrition, we would need to maintain a kill ratio exceeding 20 to 1 while losing no German aircraft. This is mathematically impossible." November 1944 brought increasingly desperate missions against ever larger American formations. Steiner's 203rd and 204th victories came during a chaotic engagement with over 1,500 American bombers and fighters, the largest air armada he had ever seen. The formation extended beyond visual range, a river of aircraft that took nearly an hour to pass overhead. During this mission, Steiner experienced a moment of clarity that completed his transformation from confident ace to pessimistic realist. While pursuing a damaged B-24, he noticed something that chilled him more than enemy gunfire. The American formation maintained perfect discipline despite German attacks. Aircraft held position, maintained formation integrity, and continued toward their targets as if German fighters were merely another navigational hazard. This was not the behavior of an air force being worn down by attrition. This was the systematic application of air power by an enemy with such overwhelming strength that individual losses were irrelevant to mission success. After landing, Steiner walked to the intelligence office where reconnaissance photographs from England were posted for pilot briefings. The images, updated weekly, showed American bomber bases expanding continuously. New runways, additional aircraft parking areas, enlarged maintenance facilities, visual evidence of growing American air power despite months of intensive German defensive efforts. Major Wolfgang Bommer, Falk, a night fighter expert visiting from division headquarters, summarized the situation bluntly: "We are shooting down American aircraft faster than ever before in terms of absolute numbers. Last month, German fighters destroyed over 600 enemy aircraft. Yet American formation sizes continue increasing. We are winning tactically and losing strategically. December 1944 brought the final pieces of Steiner's education in industrial warfare. Intelligence reports compiled from multiple sources painted a picture of American capabilities that defied German understanding of military logistics. The United States was operating over 300 major aircraft manufacturing facilities employing 2.1 million workers. Production had reached a rate where America completed one aircraft every 5 minutes around the clock. This industrial base was protected by geography, 3,000 miles from the nearest German forces, and was actually expanding during wartime rather than being degraded. Meanwhile, German aircraft production was collapsing under sustained Allied bombing. The dispersal program, which moved production into underground facilities and small workshops, had reduced quality and efficiency. Many aircraft reached operational units requiring extensive repairs before first flight. Most devastating was intelligence regarding American aircrew training. The United States had established a pilot training program graduating 2,000 pilots monthly using a network of training bases that consumed more aviation fuel than Germany allocated for all combat operations. These pilots received 250-plus hours of training on aircraft identical to those they would fly in combat. German pilot training, by contrast, had been reduced to essential minimums. New pilots received 30 to 60 hours of training on obsolete aircraft before transitioning directly to high-performance fighters. Many replacement pilots died on their first missions simply due to inadequate preparation. On December 16, 1944, exactly 2 months after his 200th victory, Steiner shot down his 207th enemy aircraft, a P-51 Mustang, whose pilot bailed out safely. As he watched the American pilot's parachute descend toward German territory, Steiner realized that this young man would be replaced within days while German losses were irreplaceable. That evening, Steiner wrote his final combat diary entry. Today marked my 207th victory, but I no longer feel victorious. Each American aircraft I destroy is replaced by 2 more. Each German pilot we lose diminishes our strength permanently. We are fighting an enemy who views aircraft as consumable ammunition while we treat each fighter as an irreplaceable treasure. I have seen formations of 1,500 American aircraft operate as casually as we once flew with a dozen fighters. They possess such abundance that they destroy their own aircraft rather than risk capture when airfields are threatened. Yesterday's intelligence reported Americans had burned 47 damaged bombers at an advanced base rather than repair them. We measure success by individual victories while they measure success by industrial production. They fight with mathematics while we fight with courage. Mathematics is winning. 3 days later, Hauptmann Klaus Steiner was shot down during combat with American P-51s over Frankfurt. He survived the crash but was too badly injured to return to flying duties. His war ended not in dramatic aerial combat but in a hospital bed, reading reports of 1,000-bomber raids against targets he had once defended with a handful of fighters. Post-war analysis revealed the futility of German defensive efforts against American daylight bombing. Despite achieving remarkable individual success, pilots like Steiner, Hartmann, and Barkhorn accumulated victory totals exceeding anything achieved in previous wars. The Luftwaffe's fighter force was systematically overwhelmed by industrial production. American final production figures were staggering: 324,750 aircraft of all types, including 12,731 B-17s, 18,482 B-24s, 15,386 B-51s, and thousands of other combat aircraft. Germany managed 119,871 aircraft total, including trainers and transports. More significantly, American aircraft quality improved continuously throughout the war as production experience accumulated. Late-war B-17s and P-51s incorporated hundreds of design improvements based on combat experience. German aircraft quality declined as materials became scarce and experienced workers were drafted into military service. The pilot training disparity was equally decisive. America trained approximately 400,000 aircrew during the war using abundant fuel, modern equipment, and systematic instruction programs. Germany trained perhaps 100,000 aircrew total, with quality declining drastically after 1943 due to fuel shortages. In 1967, former Hauptmann Klaus Steiner, then working as a commercial airline pilot, was interviewed by aviation historian William Green about the air war over Germany. Steiner's assessment was brutally honest. We flew superbly designed aircraft with exceptional individual skill against an enemy whose strength lay in systematic organization and industrial capacity. Our aces achieved remarkable personal scores that became meaningless when viewed against American production statistics. I shot down over 200 American aircraft and felt proud of each victory. But America built 300,000 aircraft during the war. My entire career's work represented less than one day's production from their factories. We never understood that we were fighting a different kind of war. We measured success by traditional military standards, individual skill, tactical victories, superior equipment quality. They measured success by production statistics, replacement rates, and systematic application of overwhelming force. When I saw my first 1,000-bomber formation in late 1944, I knew the war was lost. No amount of individual skill could overcome such industrial capacity. We were fighting the inevitable. The story of Klaus Steiner's 200 victories represents a broader truth about World War II's conclusion in Europe. Traditional military virtues, individual skill, tactical excellence, superior training, became irrelevant when confronted with industrial warfare on the scale America had achieved by 1944. German pilots did achieve remarkable individual success against overwhelming odds. The Luftwaffe's final kill-to-loss ratio remained favorable throughout the war. But favorable exchange rates were meaningless when the enemy could replace losses faster than Germany could inflict them. America's achievement was not primarily military but industrial. They had solved the problem of mass-producing complex military equipment while maintaining quality and training personnel to use it effectively. This industrial advantage, protected by geography and sustained by abundant resources, made American victory inevitable once full production capacity was achieved. The mathematics were inexorable. By late 1944, America was producing aircraft faster than Germany could train pilots to fly them, even if German pilots faced no combat losses. The war had become a contest between German tactical skill and American industrial capacity. Industrial capacity won. Dr. Williamson Murray's analysis in Strategy for Defeat, the Luftwaffe 1933 to 1945, concluded, German fighter pilots achieved individual success rates unmatched in aviation history while losing a war of production statistics. Their tactical victories were strategically meaningless against an enemy whose industrial capacity exceeded Germany's ability to inflict attrition. The Tiger tank at Malmedy, mentioned in accounts of fuel shortages, and Klaus Steiner's Bf 109 at Darmstadt both represent the same phenomenon. Exceptional German military equipment rendered useless not by enemy action but by industrial warfare's mathematics. Individual excellence, whether Steiner's 200-plus aerial victories or a Tiger tank's superior armor, became historical curiosities in the face of American industrial abundance that could afford to waste more resources than Germany could produce. The lesson extends beyond World War II. In conflicts between industrial powers, production capacity and resource availability determine outcomes more decisively than individual skill or equipment quality. Wars are won in factories and training schools, not just in combat. Klaus Steiner understood this truth while fighting above Germany in 1944. Each victory became proof of inevitable defeat. Each formation of American bombers evidenced that Germany was fighting an enemy whose strength grew daily despite German tactical success. The 200 small victory markers painted beneath his cockpit told a story of exceptional individual achievement overwhelmed by industrial reality. In modern warfare, mathematics defeats courage, production overwhelms skill, and abundance destroys dedication through systematic application of overwhelming force. This was Steiner's discovery over the skies of Germany, that wars between industrial powers are won not by aces, but by assembly lines.